Growing up, I was the only girl in a pack of neighbourhood boys. My family lived on the east coast, so there were plenty of trees for the boys and I to play in. We made forts, played hide and seek, and had miles upon miles of woods to explore. My parents got me a puppy when I was 7, and by the time I was 9, the family dog was 65 pounds, and enough of a deterrent that strangers wouldn't approach me. My parents made sure Taz was ridiculously well trained. He heeled, had an excellent recall, barked, and stopped barking on command, and had a very terrifying growl that scared people from getting too close. He'd stay with me off leash, only bolting if I gave him permission to chase a deer, squirrel, or occasionally have him chase one of my friends. I had to take Taz with me every time I went out. There was a grove of trees behind one of my best friend's houses that was very long and maybe a quarter-mile thick. Houses surrounded it on every side, but you could get so deep into it that you couldn't see any houses. We played there often, as it was close enough to home that we could scamper back before dark and not get into any trouble. On this particular day, we decided to play hide and seek. The boys made Taz and me seek first, and we found them ridiculously fast. After we were done, I decided that we should hide in a special place. A few weeks before, one of the older boy packs had told us never to go into one spot of bushes and tall grass. We asked why, but they muttered about poison ivy and snakes, and we didn't think to ask further. I had an immunity to poison ivy, and I knew Taz would warn me if there were any snakes nearby, so we went for it. The forbidden spot would be the best hiding place, because nobody would think to go there. The forbidden spot was pretty much a 50-foot circle of space. There was a sidewalk to my left and the forest to my right, so I made sure to hide Taz and myself well enough that nobody could see us from either side. I put Taz down, stayed and waited for my friend to admit he couldn't find us, in the best of hiding spots. 2 minutes in, Taz starts growling. Thinking he sees a stranger, I peek towards the sidewalk and quietly order him to hush. Nobody's on the sidewalk. I start to look right, thinking someone might be sneaking up beside us. Nope. Right in front of us, on the other side of the bush, is another girl and another dog. I peek through the branches and see that she looks like every girl from every horror movie. Long black hair but with bangs so I can see her glowing red eyes. I can't focus on her face because of those eyes. They're somehow slightly misty or fuzzy, making it hard for me to see her pupil. I barely even notice her off-white dress. Her dog is gigantic, at least the size of a wolf. It's long and skinny with the same glowing red eyes as her. The dog looked like a very buff, bald Labrador. In the few seconds where I stared, the girl took another step forward. Taz was done hushing. He growled as loudly as he could and tried to dart at her. I grabbed Taz's collar, not wanting him to fight with a gigantic dog that could have ripped him to pieces. Neither the girl nor her dog seemed frightened by Taz. They turned around and walked nonchalantly back towards the sidewalk. Taz ripped free of his slip-on collar and chased after them, breaking free of the tree line. I followed Taz and looked all around, but nobody was there. It had only been a second since they'd left. We were in a neighbourhood, so the way they went only led to sidewalks, townhouses, and manicured grass. Taz had stopped growling and had his nose to the ground, running in a wide circle to try to pick up their scent again. Taz couldn't seem to find anything because he returned to my side. I looked everywhere, but couldn't see the red-eyed girl or her dog. We went back into the trees and ran promptly into one of the boys. "Found you first." Back in 2011, our family moved from my childhood village to a nearby town called Buckeberg. We moved into a half-timbered house from the 16th century, which was a listed building. My mother had just taken over a restaurant and was always very stressed at this point. I was 12 years old and had to grow up very early because my mother had to be able to rely on me while she had to take care of her restaurants. My and my sister's rooms were outside my parents' apartment and had real front doors. so to speak. As it was such an old building, the floor consisted almost entirely of wooden floorboards, which in isolated places creaked quite thickly when you stepped on them. One of these places was right at the entrance to my room, maybe 2 or 3 steps away from the door, which was also one of the loudest places you could step on. But these spots only creaked when there was weight on it, so it wasn't enough if I threw a shirt there or something. After living there for about half a year, I woke up for the first time through the creaking of the floorboards in the middle of the night, which I couldn't really understand at this point since I only woke up. Since I couldn't find an explanation, I dismissed it as a normal sound made by the wood and went back to sleep with a queasy feeling. For weeks, nothing happened until I woke up again to this squeaking. This time, not as sleepy as the last time, I quickly realized that this was not normal. So violent and loud, as if someone was standing on the squeaky spot and his weight was lost. I thought I was going completely crazy and could no longer trust my perception. After the floorboards did not stop creaking after more than a minute, I couldn't take it anymore and ran over to my mother's bedroom and told her, crying, what was going on. My mother still believes that I dreamed it. And so the squeak happened every now and then, and over time, I gradually lost the fear of it. It was about 8 or 9 months since the first incident, when some new things were gradually added, such as doors that opened and closed by themselves, one of our taps that suddenly ran in the middle of the night, and our cats that just started in the air and hissing and growling. Over the time we lived there, my entire gut feeling became increasingly uncomfortable. More and more often, I had the feeling that I wasn't alone. It almost felt as if I had someone sitting on my shoulder who was with me, no matter where and whenever. It was almost overwhelming. And then there was that one night after which I couldn't sleep in my room for 3 weeks or so. I was in my bed just before falling asleep in the evening, when that stupid squeaking of the floorboards started again. In the meantime, more annoyed than fearful, I pressed my pillow onto my ears in the hope that it would stop, as always. But this time it was different. It didn't stop after 2 or 3 minutes as usual, but went on for over 15 minutes and slowly got louder and more intense until I looked at some point. What I saw almost gave me a heart attack. I could literally feel a shockwave go through my whole body, together with goosebumps. I was so scared that I almost vomited. I saw someone standing at the foot of my bed about 5 feet away and just staring at me. Because of the shock, I was frozen and stared back for what felt like 5 seconds. In these fractional moments, I could see what was there. It looked like an old woman in a long shirt and curly hair. This expression on her face, it looked disappointed and almost a little angry. But as I saw and realized all these facts, she was gone again. I slept on our couch for the next few weeks. My mother didn't want to believe all of this. It seemed to me as if I was the only one who noticed all these strange things. I think it was anywhere from a month to 3 months after the night I saw the old woman. At that point, I just turned 14. I came home from the cinema where I watched the second part of the Hobbit series with buddies. Later that evening, I was lying in my bed thinking about the film and what happened in it, when from one second to the other, the floorboards began to creak again. That was the first time after the incident with the old woman that it squealed again, and a fear rose up in me I've never felt before. I had hoped so much that the noises would just stop right away, but I thought wrong. It was like the last time, only this time I didn't dare look at what made me lie there for about half an hour. When I was lying there and the noises didn't stop, a feeling came up in me that told me it won't stop until you look. I just wanted it to stop, so after a while, I gave into that feeling and looked. As shocked as the first time, I see another person standing there, but this time a little different from the old woman. It's a man in his mid-30s with old clothes, a helmet with a broken lamp, and a dirty face. Like the old woman, he just stands there and stares at me for a few seconds with the same look as the woman before he disappears. Fortunately for me, we moved out a few weeks later anyway, which is how all these things ended. Since then, nothing has ever happened to me. I myself never believed in such a thing, and even made fun of people who said something like that. I don't tell anyone about it because nobody believes me and everyone thinks I'm crazy if I do it. To this day, I can't categorize it properly, and I'm sure that I have a kind of a little trauma from it. But I'm also very sure of one thing, and that is that there are ghosts. So when I was a kid, probably like 9 or 10, my aunt moved into a small trailer that my grandma's cousin and her husband owned. They had a good bit of land and were avid hunters, so they put this trailer on their land for their hunter friends to stay in whenever they'd visit. The only people that ever stayed there were random hunters and my aunt. One night, me, my mom, and my siblings stayed the night with my aunt. I remember the night pretty clearly. My aunt decided to rent the movie Shallow Hal, and I was stoked to watch it. I'm enjoying the evening with my family, and about halfway through the movie, I get this eerie feeling like someone's watching me. I look to my left, and out the window, to see the face and upper body of a tall, lanky, semi-transparent old man staring in at me. Dude did not look happy at all. I instantly felt my blood run cold and my heart beat the fastest or hardest it's ever beaten in my entire life. I was so shocked, all I could do was look back at the TV as quickly as I could and try to pretend like nothing happened. I couldn't even find the courage to speak and tell everyone what I had just seen. Later that night, everyone's getting ready for bed, and I'm definitely not looking forward to it. My younger siblings sleep in the next room, my mum and aunt in my aunt's room, and I sleep on the living room couch alone. My aunt had a dog that stayed outside, and she barked all night long. Honestly, this was a little out of character for her, because she was always a pretty chill dog, never really barking unless a car pulled up. Between the dog barking like crazy and the mini heart attack I had earlier from seeing some spooky old ghost man, I didn't think I'd ever get to sleep. But eventually, I passed out. This is the part that's always been mega weird to me. I woke up in the middle of the night, no longer on the couch but laying on the floor. It's what felt like I was being electrocuted. I don't know. I felt what I imagine it would feel like to be tased. I couldn't move and wanted to scream, but nothing would come out. Absolutely terrifying. 100% thought I was going to die. It was the weirdest feeling ever. After a couple of minutes, I was able to get up and I ran straight to my aunt's room, crying like a baby. Of course, she said I was only having a nightmare, and I ended up sleeping on the floor next to her bed for the rest of the night. In August of 2017, I was excited to buy a small house in Ontario. I had a good friend of mine move in to help with some bills throughout the rest of 2017. We only had a few cupboards in the kitchen open that we played off as something else, not really believing in the paranormal. Throughout the beginning of 2018 is when it really became active. It began slamming the kitchen cupboards, closing a door we never close, turning on the stove, leaving a claw mark on my thigh. And at one point, I was able to watch what I thought was my roommate walk from the kitchen to his bedroom, but he was still in the basement on his computer. In June of 2018, my roommate decided to move in with his girlfriend, so I thought it was time for mine to move in with me. She was obviously skeptical at first. In November, we found out we were having a baby. Over the 9 months of pregnancy there, next to no activity, just cupboards left open again. August 2019, our baby is born. And the second we walk through the front door, we hear the baby room's door slam shut with incredible force. All through the first year of life, there was all kind of activity. We could hear voices through the sound machine, which shouldn't be possible. Constant slamming of things. Every picture we had hung had been taken off the wall. Lights flickering. And the shower turning on. You name it. It got so bad that at one point we even considered bringing in a priest, even though we're not religious. Should I be scared for my baby's well-being? Should I try and expel the ghost somehow? I don't know how to start off this story, so I'll go straight to what happened. It was a regular Saturday night. I was at home with my older sister, and my mom was waiting for my dad to come home from work. Keep in mind, my dad worked very late as a welder, and it took him a little over an hour to go to and from work. However, it was past 9 p.m, and my dad would usually come home by 7:30. So my mom sent me and my older sister to bed. We shared bunk beds during that time. So I turned on my Finding Nemo nightlight and headed to bed. I wake up randomly and look at my nightstand, which had an old digital clock. And in dimly lit green numbers, I remember vividly seeing 1:52 a.m. Then, as I look up toward my open bedroom door, I see a man who's wearing a baseball cap, fully dressed, and about the height and build of my dad. My room was slightly dimmed because of my nightlight, but I wasn't able to see any more details than that. Also, I barely woke up, so my eyes were adjusting. I immediately assume it's my dad coming back from work and checking up on me and my sister, like he always did. So I say, "Dad, why are you coming home so late?" The shadow figure then walks into my parents' room, which is right next to our room. I found it odd that my dad didn't say anything to me. So I got up immediately and walked into their room. As I turn on their bedroom lights, my mum is in her nightgown and my dad is sleeping in his boxers. It was not even 5 seconds from the time the shadow figure walked into the room. I was expecting to see my father standing, changing into his sleeping clothes. But no, they were sound asleep. I woke up my parents, and my dad goes around and checks the house to see if it was an intruder. But the house door was locked, and we have gated windows so no one can break in. I slept in between them that night. To end this already long story, a couple of days ago, while visiting my parents and sleeping in my old room, I wake up to go pee. And as I head back to bed, I look at my phone. The time said 1:52 a.m. I get this sudden feeling of dreadfulness, and as I'm standing looking at my phone near the bed, I look back, and there he is again, standing by the open door. His shadow figure was just blurry showing. Because of the stove lights, my mum forgot to turn off. I immediately go under the covers like I was 11 again and just go to sleep. I told my parents about this story and they just say I'm spiritual. I've had a few other encounters I might write about later, but this was one of the 2 experiences that impacted me the most. For context, my family is very Catholic. 3 generations, grandmother, mother, me, of catechists. My grandmother was a Eucharist minister and led several prayer groups before she got sick. My mom helps with the charity events in the parish. I was born into church life and was heavily involved as well. When I was a kid, about 4 years old, I used to have this swing set in my backyard. I was an only child with a very busy single mom at the time. I closed my eyes and wished for someone to push me high in the swings. I was taught that Jesus was the best friend you could ask for. So I closed my eyes and asked him to play with me and to push on the swings. Next thing I know, I'm flying and the sky looks so blue and shiny almost. Definitely knew someone was there with me, pushing me higher and higher on the swing set. Didn't feel scared. I had a lot of fun. I didn't look back. I don't know why. I just knew he was there. At the time, I didn't realize that what happened was bizarre. Then found out people don't actually see Jesus, like walking around or playing with them. They just thought it was cute when I said I played with Jesus. I don't think they realized what I was referring to. Sometime after that, I had a horrible nightmare. I screamed, and my mom had to pray over me to convince me I was safe and to go back to bed. I don't remember the dream. I do remember, however, telling my grandma, which she replied with, "The devil comes in dreams to torment and scare us. I've had similar dreams too. Don't be afraid, they're more afraid of you." My mother just wrote it off as a typical nightmare, but those words that my grandmother told me got stuck in my little 5-year-old brain. Fast forward 13 years. I'm getting ready for college, spending my last Holy Week home. I was preparing for a big move. I was nervous. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. It was Holy Thursday, and we were in Eucharistic adoration till midnight. I was in deep prayer, asking for guidance. Lost track of time. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Big, strong, warm. I thought it may be my mom or somebody else showing me their support or joining me. I'm very touchy-feely with people, so it wouldn't surprise or bother me. When I finally opened my eyes, I look back and nobody has their hand on my shoulder, but I still feel it there. I look to where the person should be, look up and smile. There was no fear in me. I felt at total peace. At the same time, my soul felt it could float out my body. When I looked at my knees, they were already darkish blue and purple. It seemed I was kneeling for too long without noticing. It physically hurt to get up, and I felt happy but tired and drained from the experience. Next day, Holy Friday, we were back in the church in adoration. There's something we do called guarding, which people are assigned to stand close to the Eucharist in comparison to the rest of the people. And you rotate. It's a big deal for us Catholics since, in our minds, it's literally being at the feet of Jesus. Anyway, I was put on guard duty. Your focus is supposed to be solely on him. You're not supposed to look back until you're tapped on the shoulder, which indicates you have to switch. I'm doing my guard and I feel these footsteps behind me. I know it's supposed to be my substitute. I'm turning slightly around since I know they're close by to reach me. However, standing there behind me is a blonde man in a white robe of sorts. Then gone. It was a split second. That shocked me. I knew it wouldn't hurt me, but actually seeing him and then disappearing, and nobody else noticed. I couldn't shake it out of my system. Half of me thinks I just imagined it. Half knows I didn't. After the shock passed, I was euphoric. I could see angels, damn it. I was going to start healing the sick and levitating. All that cool shit. I got cocky. Thought I was spiritually super strong. Since I thought I had this superpower, I had to use it for good. So I tried to do an exorcism. Yeah, we all make mistakes. But this one was the worst of all. There wasn't anything even paranormal in the house. I just wanted to say the rites out loud so I could scare them demons and make them cower in fear. Oh boy. I started saying the rites, which by the way, it's said to be used by a priest only, and the lights started to flicker. All three of them. Then, all at once, they went out. An impending sense of doom gripped me. Something was in the room with me. I don't know if I screamed or not. I was paralyzed by fear. Finally, I ran out of there and was able to breathe again. I didn't tell my mom what I did, since I was still in shock and didn't want to expose her. The less she knew, the better. It could kill me, but not her. I didn't sleep that night. I just prayed. I asked God to show me what the hell attacked, and coincidentally, an article on Asmodeus popped up. Pretty convinced it was him. Next morning, I was going to use the bathroom to get ready for school. When I turned to go in, I saw this black figure just sitting on it. Solid black, spiky. No eyes, mouth, featureless. Big, extremely so. It looked solid, not like a shadow. I ran for my life downstairs. I wanted to scream, but it couldn't get the noise out. I didn't eat that day. I was too nauseous. The adrenaline kept pumping through me the whole day. I was in shock. Then, fast forward to the present day. My grandmother was attacked by a red and black being last Saturday. She was in the guest room, praying and preparing for bed, turning the lights off, and this thing just showed up. All windows and doors were closed. Our houses are of cement, so we don't have too much problem with bats in our homes. And even if it was one, we don't have any that are black and red. It had wings and flew all around them, attacking them. Pretty big, although she wasn't too sure of the shape since it was so dark. My grandmother told us this. My heart sank and I've been pretty stressed and fearful this week. My mom thinks it was just a nightmare or some kind of medicine-induced hallucination. However, my grandmother told us she's been having these kinds of incidents a long time ago and spoken to priests about it. According to her, they told her that they target very prayerful, devout people in order to scare them off. She was over it quickly and then discussing where we could go shopping. She has balls of steel, but I'm so scared. I don't know if it's a thing that runs in the family or being more sensitive, but it's scary as hell. Since this was September, I had already been purchasing Christmas gifts. The one I had for my dad was a pocket knife, specifically one designed with a bone handle grip and silver blade. Not very big, just enough of one for him to use as needed. He had carried a pocket knife at all times my entire life. I mention this because it's important in my story. He never saw this knife, by the way. A few weeks after he passed, I had a dream that my mom called and said, "Hey, your dad just got out of the hospital from having a minor heart attack," and said they were going to our church to have some lunch. So I said I would meet them there with my wife and son to get some food. When I got there, I remember just sitting down and talking with my parents and enjoying our time. At which point my dad started messing with the hospital band he had on his wrist. I said, "Dad, I'll get that off for you, so hang on." And as I reached to get my knife, he put his hand on mine and said, "Hang on, son, why don't you use this knife instead?" And then he pulled out the pocket knife I had bought him for Christmas that year. He then put his hand on my shoulder and told me that he was okay and not to worry, that he felt better than ever. Then he began to glow very bright, just before I woke up. Could this have been a dream forced by my mind? Possibly, yes. But since then, I've had multiple instances in my home that could be the doing of my deceased father. This has just made me realise how true it is that our parents have much less time available to them than we may think. A couple of months ago, I was driving with my wife down a rural highway in Oregon, returning home from a road trip to Crater Lake. We live on the coast, and the highway we were taking to get back is very curvy, as it winds through Cascade Mountain Range. It was dark as ink, and probably about 11 p.m. We were driving along, and as I was watching the road, going about 45 miles an hour, we round a bend which makes me slow down to about 45. And just as we get around it, my wife suddenly says, "Look out, there's a person there." It takes me a second for some reason. As I let off the gas, then I notice it, crouched near the side of this 2-lane highway. On my left side is a person wearing what looks like grey baggy sweats or clothes and a reflective vest. This is an easy 20 miles either direction from civilization and is heavily wooded. Think Oregon coast forest. I begin braking and instantly the figure stands up, faces us and begins jogging directly at the car. It felt like electricity in the air as when she faced us, her head was flopped to the side, like her neck was totally limp and her mouth was wide open. She appeared to have grey hair and her arms and hands were held up to her chest, her wrists curled. Her legs didn't seem to be working right either as she hobbled at us, thinking like severely progressed MS. Then it hit this primal feeling of dread, like my subconscious knew something wasn't right. I couldn't fully focus on her as the car was still moving and I had to steer, but my wife was looking right at her. My first thought normally would have been to hit the brakes and see what was going on, as once again, this is literally miles and miles from town. But there was just this dreadful feeling in the air, and time almost seemed to slow down. At that moment, I heard my wife say, "Don't stop, just go." Instinctively, I accelerated. As we sped up, this lady was jogging right at us, and must have come within a foot of running into the side of our car as we went past her. We rounded the next bend, and I looked at my wife and just said, "What the hell was that? I should turn around. Who the hell jogs out here? What was wrong with her neck?" My wife just looks at me and says, "No, don't go back. I don't know what that was." I told her I couldn't look directly at her for long, as I was focused on the road, but described what I saw, and she confirmed she saw the same. She said when she came up to the side of the car, she was staring right at us, and my wife looked her in the eyes, but she didn't have any pupils, and her expression stayed just like frozen, mouth open. We scoured news stories, and I even contacted authorities. They advised no one was reported missing or hurt out there. I still get this strange, intense, electrified feeling anytime I think about her, as does my wife. Anytime I talk about her, I'm compelled to refer to the person as it. All I know is it wasn't right. We have now coined her the floppy-headed jogger. Anyone else experienced something like this? So this actually happened not too long ago. My friend and I were walking back to my house at about 3 a.m. We had just got done taking a walk to go smoke a doob. We both have our medical cards. When we walked past a bridge by the local powwow grounds. We were talking shit about the tribal chairman when we heard a whistle come from about 20 feet behind us. So for a little context, I live on a Native American reservation, and us Native Americans are very superstitious. For example, if you jump out of a window, you have to jump back through for reasons I'm not even sure about. I was never really traditional. But another rule is that you're not supposed to whistle at night. I think it's like letting spirits know that you're being an idiot or something like that. I always like to piss off my other more traditional friends by whistling at night, and it just happens to be one of those nights. The whistle we heard was very loud, and it sounded like one you need your fingers to do. I jumped when we heard it, and I turned to look at my friend, who looked like he was ready to cry. We both looked back at the pitch black, ready to get molested by some angry spirits. We looked for maybe 10 seconds before my friend just started bolting the other direction, leaving me behind. I'm not one to get scared easily, but damn was it terrifying being left alone in the dark. I finally caught up to him, and we had made it to the nearby community college, and we stopped under a streetlight. We both looked in the direction of the bridge. As if to taunt us, whoever or whatever it was whistled at us again, this time a little quieter. I was completely mind-blown more than scared, because I've never experienced anything like this before. My friend, on the other hand, was keen on getting back to my house. So we jogged back to my house and continued to talk about it for the rest of the night, while playing some games. About a month or so ago, I was staying with my partner Crow at his family home. He's not long moved into his old, bigger room, and generally, I get no bad vibes from it. One night, we happened to not get to sleep right away, which was uncommon, but not unsettling or for weird reasons. We just went to bed late. The room was pretty much completely dark, and we just kind of lay in bed, and both seemed to be staring at the ceiling. We didn't realise we were staring at the same thing. See, Crow turned to me and said, "Boy, do you see that?" Which I replied, "Yeah." We proceeded to watch this darker than usual shadow exist, almost completely still in a normal-ish form, in the middle of the ceiling directly above Crow. After a few minutes, the shape started morphing and moving in the same spot, changing size whilst doing so. Crow then said, "It kind of looks like it's moving." At this point, we both must have been thinking we were having some differing sleep-deprived hallucinations. I then said, "Yeah, it's moving a bit like an octopus. It has arms." And Crow was a bit thrown, since he then confirmed that we were watching the same thing. The room was dark, but the shape was darker, like pitch black, like staring in a living void on the ceiling above us. When we turned the light on to see if it was a shadow reflecting off something, it wasn't. It had nothing to reflect off. There was nothing moving in the room, and there was no light source to produce this shadow. when we sat up, it didn't move. It stayed there, moving violently on the spot and changing shape. I'm not even sure why we weren't even scared, just weirded out and curious. We were watching it for so long, I can't even remember how long. I can't even remember falling asleep. I finally decided to tell this dream or nightmare I had, something like 5 years ago. A little bit of context. Keep in mind that my grandma was already deceased by the time I dreamt the following story. And also my dad used to be very, way too much probably, invested in the paranormal at some point of his life because he wanted to contact his father that had passed away. My story must have happened somewhere around 2015. My grandma used to live with my aunt, who was a nurse who took care of her. It was only the two of them all the time. They used to live in a big house in the city centre of Bordeaux, in France, and the house always felt kind of creepy. It had a second floor with marble stairs. When you got on the top of the stairs, just on your right was my grandma's bedroom. Now please keep in mind that if there ever was one place in the whole world that my siblings and I were not allowed to go in when we were young, it was our grandma's bedroom. Anyways, now let the dream begin. I'll describe how it happened through my very own perspective. I'm on the second floor and I'm just out of my aunt's bedroom, which is on the opposite side of my grandma's room. In the dream, I'm aware that my grandma is deceased, and also that I'm currently alone in the house with my aunt, but I can hear her laugh. I don't understand why, and I see her just exiting my grandma's bedroom. I asked her, "Who are you talking to?" She's holding this basket of laundry under her arm, and she answers, "Go and see for yourself," still laughing. I advance and I get to the entrance of my room. I take one step inside and I notice a presence on the right. I look right and I see my grandpa. He died when I was 5 or 6, so I don't have any real memory of him. Sitting on the bed. The room is bright and when I see him, I'm surprised. He's looking right in front of him and then slowly turns his head right to look at me. When he's looking at me, he smiles at me and I'm feeling very good. I can feel like he's protecting me, watching over me, and that he loves me actually. But then I sense something on my left. Remember, it all happened so fast in the dream. It all felt like it lasted 10 seconds in total. So I turn my head on the left and there's this big closet carved inside the wall. And inside the closet, there's my grandma standing, looking in front of her in a very blind way, I would say. But it's not my grandma as I've known her, old. She's in her mid-50s, has brown hair and big glasses. When I see her, I'm even more surprised and scared actually, and then it happens. She turns her head and looks at me extremely quickly. Her gaze is pure evil. I can feel that she hates me. She loved me when she was alive. It's only a dream, right? Wait for it. And wants to hurt me. At the very same exact moment, there were a lot of creepy noises in the dream, like violins, untuned, just like in horror movies. At this particular moment, I am overwhelmed, completely and utterly terrified, and also completely paralyzed. I cannot move an inch. I'm petrified, and then I woke up. But what woke me up? That's the problem. I remember perfectly what woke me up. I felt 2 gentle knocks or strokes on the back of my head. The second one was fainter. Awoken, I was disoriented and scared, but I fell asleep again. The time was around 2 or 3 a.m. The next day, and actually the following days, I couldn't stop thinking about the dream. It all felt so real. I was scared of going to sleep again, and I was also overthinking about the 2 knocks on my head that woke me up. I know I felt them. I told my dad everything, even though he never spoke of paranormal to us before, because he wanted to protect us in some way. He concluded that I had received a visit. I was visited by someone. Maybe my grandma, but it's weird. Why would it turn into such a horrible nightmare? My brother Andrew is a massive skeptic. He doesn't believe in anything of the paranormal realm. He'll try to find a scientific explanation for everything. He and I share a wall between our bedrooms. So one night, I was sleeping and I woke up to the sound of my door opening. As my door opens, I can see a shadow on the wall of something short looking. So at this point, I'm wide awake and scared to death. I try to move to get up to see what the shadow is, and I hear a voice whisper in my ear. No, 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 no. It was right in my ear. I was in my bed facing the wall. Anytime I tried to move, even my toes, it would whisper, no, 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 no. It felt like 10 minutes had passed, and then I heard my door close and I was able to move again. The next morning, I was telling my brothers what had happened, and Andrew goes, "You're not going to like this, but I had the weirdest dream." Andrew proceeds to tell me that a little 3-foot tall thing comes into my room, and I saw it walking around. But when I got close to my bed, I got up and tried to punch it. In the time it took me to make contact, it had disappeared. I asked him how he knew it was a dream, and he said he's just thinking it was a dream because it was unexplainable. I asked him what time it was, and he said when he saw the clock it was 3:30. When it finally left my room, it was 3:15. Haven't had an experience like that again, but all I know is I was wide awake, and I've never been so scared of something. So I used to babysit these 2 boys when I was a teenager. I was with them for years and started watching them when they were 3 and 1 years old. Michael and Sam. Every time I was in that house, I'd get such a creepy vibe. I'd hear sounds all the time. So years had passed. Now they were 8 and 6. Typically, when I was at their house, I'd stay in the kitchen while they played in the basement. They had a TV and games, etc. Massive toys room. I heard Michael saying, "You need to stop that, Sally." So it did weird me out, like he was calling his brother Sally. I ignored it and just continued to listen to them because they seemed to be fine after that. About 30 minutes later, I heard someone say, "Oh, Michael, where did you go?" I didn't know who that was, so I ran down the stairs. When I entered the game room, Sam looked at me really confused and said, "Chris, what's wrong?" I see Michael sitting on the couch. I look around and no one's there. So I ask Sam who was talking. If they were talking on the phone to a friend or something. Sam looks me in the eye and says, "Oh no, Chris, that was just Michael's friend Sally. She comes to visit sometimes." He continued playing his game like that was a normal statement. I asked Michael who Sally was and he said, "She's my friend. She likes to play with me and be silly. She's behind you, waiting for me to go play." I immediately jumped around and no one was there. I got this weird feeling, and I remember just telling the boys I'd be upstairs. I ran up so fast. To this day, I hear her voice calling Michael. My house has always been pretty haunted. A man died in the 1960s in my house, and his grandchild died a couple days later in the hospital. We hear things and see things all the time. Dishes clanking as if somebody's eating or putting them away. I saw a man in the house. We've seen kids' footprints in the house. None of us are children. Today, they brought home my grandfather's ashes and instantly I got so queasy. I've been telling them it's a bad idea to do so just because the owner of the house is here. The man I've seen in the house. He's never done anything bad. Just kind of walks around and keeps to himself and watches. The kid doesn't bother us either. She just walks around and moves things. Never been scared to stay in the house by myself. Until today. As soon as the ashes came home, I didn't even know it, but I could feel it. I got a really queasy feeling like I was going to throw up, and I heard my dad say, "Why are you bringing them here? And go bring them back to your mom's house." My grandma's staying with us, so our house is empty. That was my grandfather's favourite place, his house. She said she was going to keep them upstairs in her room. I got so nauseous, it was so weird. My family left the store and I couldn't be in the house by myself. It just felt weird that something was wrong. I don't know. Maybe the spirits just aren't okay with each other. I have no idea. All I know is I've been feeling nauseous since they came into the house. And you keep feeling like something's watching everything I do. But it's a feeling that I don't know. Like I don't know who's watching me, but usually I can tell who it feels like. What should I do? Why did this happen? I once worked at a gas station in my town. It was nothing like you see today, where they have entire delis, row after row of snacks or anything like that. This place was old as dirt, and if we had 5 customers inside at once, it was packed wall to wall. I always had to work the overnight shift there, which meant watching whatever channels the antenna could pick up late at night on our tiny box TV in the corner, and smoking cigarettes behind the counter. Yeah, we could actually do that back then. My boss had an ancient desktop computer set up in the back room for our truck rental business that we ran off of the property. And I liked to sneak back there and check my MySpace and a few other sites. I could always hear the bell when a customer came in, and I had a direct line of sight to the front of the store from the desk, so it wasn't an issue. I was even allowed to take my dog with me once in a while, a little corgi. I would often hear noises in the back, but always chalked it up to my imagination because it was late at night and I was sure that I was overtired. Well, that changed when I began to bring my dog with me. I would bring him right in the back while I surfed the web, and he would always lay down facing away from me. It didn't take him more than a few minutes each night to begin perking his ears up and ruffling under his breath, long before I began to hear anything. Once they were noises I could make out, he would be standing at attention by that point, gazing fixedly into what seemed to be thin air. The problem with taking my dog with me was that I would have to walk him, and since I didn't feel comfortable going out of the store that late at night, I only took him a few times. One of the many times he wasn't with me, I was sitting on the computer and I heard the bell on the front door jingle. When I looked up, I saw what looked like a guy walking in, and I immediately got up to help him. I stepped into the booth and saw that he was over in the corner, at the very end of my counter. My view was obstructed by the small TV in the corner and a rather large scratch-off ticket display. So while I could see the arm and shoulder of his black jacket, I couldn't see anything more than that. I broke out into my friendly smile and said, "Hello, can I help you find anything?" This was in part because I'm a genuinely friendly person, and in part because many of our customers tried to steal the Slim Jims and 5-hour energy bottles that were kept over there. As soon as I got done speaking, the man turned to me and my heart dropped. On his right temple, the one that was furthest away from me, was a bullet hole and blood coming out of it, running down his face in a thick, almost black line. I remember gripping the counter and my eyes filling with horror, because there was no way this man should have still been standing with something like that going on. I remember his eyes were just filled with sadness and exhaustion. As I was stuttering and reaching for the phone to call 911, he just left. He literally disappeared in front of me. One minute he was there, and the next he was gone. I tried for the longest time to tell myself that I must have fallen asleep somehow and dreamed it, or that it was just an imagination from my overly tired mind, but I couldn't do it. I know what I saw, and it was all in perfect clarity. After a few weeks, I eventually mentioned it vaguely to my coworker, who relieved me each morning. I didn't want to sound insane, so I just asked if she had noticed anything strange in the store. That's when she blurted out that calling cards and gift cards often drop randomly from the display over in that corner. And she hears what sounds like someone walking around when no one is in the store. I finally broke down and told her what I saw, and she laughed at me and said, "It makes sense," and then went on to tell me about a murder that had happened a few decades prior. Apparently, a man pulled up to get gas and another man saw him from the street and thought he was someone that owed him money. He peeled into the parking lot and shot him point blank before he could even make it inside to get his gas. and then sped away. He was caught and convicted, but she thought the gentleman I saw was the spirit of the one who got shot. That place is still standing today and still keeps me out. Just to add, I also used to hear a group of girls laughing hysterically outside, but no one was ever there, even when I was brave enough to go out and look. Who knows what that was about? My siblings and I spent most of our time with our father, but every other weekend we went to see my mother, who lived with her mother. They moved around a lot, and eventually moved to a multi-family home, where we got the basement apartment. I was around 12 at the time. One of the first things I was told about the house by my grandma was that the house had been around since the Revolutionary War. People unfamiliar with New England may not know how commonplace this is, especially in the area of Connecticut I'm from. Plenty of houses around here were built in the 1600s and 1700s. Many of them have plaques on them with the year. I always felt terrified in that basement, but I didn't even think that was unusual. I never asked myself why I felt so scared all the time. I always felt like I was being watched, or that there was some other presence near me. It's difficult to put into words, but at the time, being a kid, I treated it as if I were in a movie 24/7. It felt like cameras were all over me, and that there was an audience monitoring my every move, even when I slept. At the time, again, I didn't attribute this to ghosts or paranormal activity, and I really didn't have an explanation for it. I felt it the most in the bathroom. I would try to spend the least amount of time there possible, running in and running out, always thinking someone was in there. I also always had trouble falling asleep there. My brothers and I all slept in the living room. Me and one brother on the pull-out couch bed, and one would sleep on an armchair in the corner. My grandma had her own bedroom, and so did my mother. My mother eventually left. She sold her car and phone and went off with some man she just met, and we lost contact for years. When she left, I took over her bedroom on the nights we stayed with our grandma. Sleeping in that room was even more terrifying. I always heard scratching in the walls in my mother's old bedroom. They seemed to me to come from inside the middle of the wall between her room and the kitchen. At the time, I figured it was mice, though I had never seen or heard of mice being an issue in the apartment. The bedroom door would also open on its own, even though my family confirmed they were not opening my door. I remember before I would go to sleep, I would close it as properly as I could, pushing it hard, making sure it clicked, making sure it wouldn't pull open without the doorknob twisting, and yet I would wake up with the door slightly ajar. Again at the time, my explanation was that my mother had one of those behind the door shoe racks with tons of shoes hanging off, and I figured maybe the weight would pull open the door. Well, I had never seen it happen with my own eyes, and I couldn't get it to open that way myself. Finally, I went back to sleeping in the living room, and never going into my mother's old bedroom. One night, I stayed up late reading using the browser on my DS. My brothers were both asleep in the room with me, and my grandma was in her bedroom with the door closed. I turned my DS off at about 2 or 3 a.m. I faced away from the kitchen, looking towards my brothers. I heard a sound that I didn't recognize. Then after a couple seconds, I heard it again. Then again. I realized it was the sound of the refrigerator door opening. I froze and strained to listen closer. I heard the fridge door open, then after about 4 or 5 full seconds, close, and then open again. This happened over and over for a few minutes. I was too terrified to turn around. I just continued laying completely still, frozen in terror. Under no circumstance would I ever have turned around to see what was opening the fridge. I eventually moved my gaze, looking more to the side. When I noticed, I could see the light emanating into my view every time the fridge opened, and turning to black every time it closed. Eventually, it stopped and I passed out. In the morning, I told my grandma and brothers about what happened, and confirmed that none of them were messing with the fridge. I also tested the door, and it wasn't one that would just pop open. You really had to yank on it to open it, Families upstairs moved in and out and in and out. Nobody ever living there long. Eventually, even the landlord decided to live somewhere else, and we were the only family living in the entire building. We decided it was time for us to move on as well. Towards the end, I went outside the hula hoop and swore I saw a shadow watching me from an upstairs window. I never went into the backyard ever again after that. I also walked around the perimeter of the huge house on my last day there, and noticed on the side there was a door at the same level as our basement apartment. But I had no idea where it could have led, because there was no other space in our apartment that I hadn't seen, and no other doors. This door was padlocked, zip-tied, and the handle had rope and bungee cords tying it closed. The sight left me so unnerved that I ran back into our apartments immediately. When we moved out to another apartment, I noticed a different feeling immediately. I felt safe and never felt like I was being watched. That's when I decided I believed in ghosts. It happened 3 years ago when I was 13 years old, grade 8. I joined an English camp that summer, where students from different schools stayed at a learning institution for 2 weeks to learn more about English, and I shared a dorm room with 3 other roommates. On the last day of the camp, my group decided to meet up early in the morning, so we could see sunrise before our time together ends. So me and my friend woke up at around 4 in the morning, brushed our teeth and met up with others. We went to a nearby cliff to watch the sunrise. It was beautiful, although mosquito bites were everywhere. We didn't head back into our dorms immediately and walked around the area outside our dorms, passing a basketball court and a kind of creepy feeling church, although I believed nothing was wrong with the church. My friends stood at the basketball court to chat, where we could see our dorm room windows directly, as the court is just outside of the dormitory. But that's when I noticed something very weird. It was a pale white figure which resembled a woman, standing by the window, looking at us. I immediately called my friends to make sure I wasn't going insane, and they confirmed it was indeed there. As I looked closer and counted the windows, I realized the window belonged to my room in the girls' dorm. The white figure, which didn't move an inch, was completely faceless, yet I could feel it staring right at us. I was certain it was not any of my roommates, as that thing was way too white to be someone pretending to be a ghost. Plus my other sleeping roommates whom I know quite well will never do this sort of prank. Knowing the white figure in my room, I naturally got scared, hesitant to go back. But I had to go back, since we had to pack our stuff and get ready to leave. When I pushed open the door slowly in fright with my friend, we couldn't see any abnormalities. The curtains by the window were closed, completely blocking the window view, which doesn't match up as we saw the curtains were open when the figure stood there by the window. If the curtains were not opened, then how did the white figure show up? We frantically shook our asleep roommate awake and questioned her if she knew anything or if someone entered our room. She was a light sleeper and would have woken up if she heard the door opening. She said the only time she heard the door open was when my friend and I left the room, and very certain no one else has entered the room the whole time we were out. She wasn't the type of person who would pull such pranks, plus the figure did not resemble her in any way, so we firmly believed she was not behind this. The only reasonable explanation to us is something paranormal. My 4th roommate went to sleep with her friends in another room, so it couldn't have been her either. She never entered our room until 7 a.m. But when we told her about the terrifying experience we had, she told us she experienced something weird either. She slept in the same bed as her friend, and when they woke up, their bed was wet. They know they didn't wet themselves since their shorts and underwear were dry, and they didn't have any bottles of water in the room either. So that morning was quite an experience for all of us. Left me shocked, and well, I may believe in paranormal stuff to have some extent now, after my encounter. Similarly, my brother, who also went to the camp in the same institution 3 years earlier than me, told me he had the exact same thing as me when I told him I saw a ghost. He asked me if I saw the figure in the morning in the girls' dormitory, and yes, it was the same as how he described it. Pale white, faceless, encountered in the morning and lingering in the girls' dormitory. So my friends and I were not seeing things at that time. I could only assume that the white figure had been there for a long time already. Perhaps it was simply watching over us, because it never did any harm when my brother or I encountered it.